You're listening to Talk Commerce. Subscribe and download at talk-commerce.com.
Welcome to this episode of Talk Commerce. This is the community edition of Talk Commerce, and today I have Mathias Schreiber.
Yeah.
Matthias, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your new day-to-day role and maybe a little bit of your past, and then tell us a passion that you have in life.
Oh, one of the few. Okay, so let's start. Yeah, my name is Mathias Schreiber. That's the harsh German pronunciation. I'm currently the executive director of the Magento Association, so the nonprofit that's behind the Magento open source version, the events, etc., etc. And in my last 20 years, I was dedicated to open source software to an extent. So I started out with an agency doing a content management system, which is mainly out of Europe, which is called Typo3. And after roughly 12 years, Typo3 was in a bit of a downwards spiral. So I decided to talk to my co-owners of the agency and ask them, hey guys, I have a brilliant idea. I still want to get my salary and get paid, but I don't want to work here anymore because I want to dedicate my time and my passion to the open source project full time. Luckily, they were able to see the benefit behind it, and that ended up in me doing that for roughly 2 years. And after that, the organizational entity behind Typo3 was so smart to build a company, and then I was CEO of that company for roughly 7 years. And then I wanted to do something different, and then Magento seemed like a little bit in peril as well. So I decided that I guess my passion could be used here could be used well there, and so I decided to no longer pursue this, but now pursue Magento. And as you might have guessed, I love open source. I love the principle behind it. I think open source has a lot of benefits other than I get something without paying, but I think that open source is a great equalizer in society, especially globally. I believe that giving something back in order to get something more is this give a little, take a little thing. And then I surf in my spare time, so this whole what goes around comes around principle applies there as well. So I also like the business side of things, and that's what I think a lot of people tend to forget. So there's a lot of people who use open source that don't share this passion, and personally, I think that's okay. But normally, those people are just willing to simply go like, hey, you know what? But I can pay for stuff, right? I don't want to contribute code back because I want my employees to do something different, or I don't think I'm good enough, or whatever. There's like a quadrillion reasons not to contribute back to open source via code. But there's people who are just business people that say, hey, if I invest in this, and I'm able to sponsor something or to partner, then my company looks good. My conscience is like well off, so to speak. And I like to weave all this together to make open source like truly viable, because I'm a developer originally, but I come from a business background primarily. So I have like formal education in wholesale, for example. So I do know how to calculate stuff. So that's basically combining these two things is what I really like.
That's awesome. All right, so there's one thing I need to do before we continue on to our conversation. I need to tell you a joke, and you need to tell me if the joke should remain open source or if you feel as though this should be the enterprise paid version of the joke.
Is this like the test whether Germans have a sense of humor?
I'll follow up with that, but I'm going to tell. All you have to do is just tell me if the joke is open source or if it's a paid version of the joke. So Here we go. How do you get 100 math teachers in a room that only fits 99? You carry the one.
I still have to process and figure out whether I don't think I get it. Help me out. So open sourcing would benefit me greatly right now.
Yes.
Because there will be a pull request eventually explaining the whole thing to me in the review section,
Yes.
going back and forth.
So yeah, we've known each other for less than a year, so
True.
You will soon learn that my jokes are horrendous and they always have to be explained. So anyways, I will say I was at Meet Magento Poland, I don't know, in 2018 or 17, and somebody gave me a graphic that said the colors of the German flag, and blue is for humor.
Yeah, I think I just proved that point by not getting the joke.
No, it's okay. You carry the one, like in math, you carry a one to get to the next.
Over to the thing. Yeah, okay, that indeed makes sense.
Yeah, sorry. And so my first speaking engagement in the Magento community was at Magento Live Germany in Munich in 2014, and I started off by telling a joke and stone-faced.
Didn't click. Oh boy. What I found out during sessions like that is jokes that involve yourself, like putting you in a really embarrassing situations. Those work with Germans really, really well.
Oh, I have a lot of those. Okay, I can do that. Good point. Thank you for the tip.
I'm
going to use open source tip for German jokes. All right, so I do want to talk about the Magento community, and I would like to touch on community in general. But tell us about Magento Association and maybe let's do if you could do a 5-minute overview of how it's changed in the last couple of years, because there's been some big changes even in the last year.
Yeah, I think let me try to shorten that down. So the original idea was that you need a legal entity to allow people to do Meet Magento events, because somebody needs to use the trademark, sub-license the trademark, just legal stuff. When Adobe took over the Magento trademarks, the idea was that the Meet Magento Association would be changed to the Magento Association, because then you don't have to go through the entire filing process and all the complex stuff. And at the same time, Adobe provided Magento Association with generous funding, which was unfortunately, in retrospect, put into a management company that provides to run your association as a service, so to speak. And they do a really, really good job at keeping protocol and making sure that there's meeting minutes for everything and making sure that everybody gets invited and all those organizational things, which for me as a German are really close to my heart. But yet again, they don't understand how open source in itself works, because I think open source people are a special breed of people with a certain mindset, and what I've seen in the last year since I'm on the job, well, roughly last year, is that the Magento community in itself is very diverse in terms of the mindset that they're following. You have like super tough business people on the one end of the spectrum, and you have the true open source GPL purist on the other end of the spectrum, and everything in between. And I think that wasn't working too well for such a management company, which basically comes from a background of, okay, when's the next charity dinner or the next charity golf tournament that we organize in order to raise funds? because that stuff don't fly with open source people. So that resulted in, well, not the outcome that everybody wanted to see in from Magento Association, especially then with the pandemic and Adobe trying to figure out where to go with this Magento thing, because open source was new for them as well, and how to deal with the community, how to deal with very passionate people. So I took over like a year ago, roughly, a little bit less, to try and bring this expertise that I have in that field into the whole mix, and we're slowly turning things around.
Yeah,
Slightly
so
over
I
5
mean,
minutes, I guess.
no, it's fine. I mean, I think a lot of the, I'm going to just say complaints. The complaints from the community came from the fact that there wasn't a lot of communication out of the board, and there was a lot of red tape involved with Smith Buckland that didn't allow for things to move in a pace that others would like to see it move in. Right. That's a good synopsis of some of the problems we saw leading up
Yes.
to a year ago before you started.
But this is it's also, I mean, technically we're talking about expectations not being met. That's how, like, if I had really to dumb it down, like, this would be the gist of it. Smith Buckland, on the one hand, and for those who don't know, that's the management company that was hired, were not a good fit per se. On the other hand, COVID wasn't helping, and on the third variable in this whole equation was Adobe being a huge company, which cannot move fast for a variety of reasons. And then communication might have been an issue. That's I can't say right now. I just don't know, which doesn't mean I don't want to like discredit your point or something. I genuinely don't know, but I could imagine, it adds up. This is something that needs to be that still needs to be addressed, so that we can get to a good result. And it's I would like it to go a lot faster than it currently does, but I'm personally happy with the ship turning at all, rather than discussing like the U-turn radius, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think then, as let's just call it the trifecta now. We've got a new entity on the market called MageOS that came out of this frustration. I'm going to say the frustration was with Adobe more than with Magento Association, but I think the other thing that I'd like to do is let's look forward rather than looking backwards. So let's just say we have this trifecta of communities or of organizations that are now involved in the Magento community. And I think your goal and my goal is to get everybody to play together, right?
Well, that seems to be the most effective way of doing anything, pretty much. Collaboration is in the, and this is going to be like super hippie now, but collaboration is at the heart of our species, eventually. The more you start putting, the more groups you have that try to achieve the same thing but each on their own, it gets worse for everyone involved, I think.
I started a bit of a storm. There's another word that I'd use in front of it, sugar storm, or something that starts with the English word S. In fact, you're a German. You can say any swear word you want. So you're in a unique. Germans and Dutch seem to just throw out American swear words like they're candy. Anyways.
Yeah, we use it as attributes.
Yes. Fortunately, the newer versions of Magento, you can have more than 400 attributes on your product. So you can have, and as long as, even with text variable attributes. Sidetrack, sorry about that, about swear words. I'm trying to create engagement in our community. And I feel like the only way you can get people to respond, or I felt that way, was to push the boundaries with other platforms. And so I did that, and I got a lot of people angry with me because I I was promoting another platform over Magento, right? I was saying Magento, what doesn't matter what I was saying. You can look up my tweets. I had a whole bunch of tweets, and I would say yes, they were divisive, and yes, they were versus, and that was a mistake. But in an experiment or in an attempt to create engagement, I was trying different things, right? So let's call it A/B testing. I'm particularly frustrated with people saying, the Magento community is not around anymore, which I think it's very robust, and then saying that we can only say good things about the Magento community because other communities then look at us and say, oh, look at what a mess that is. I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
I think I was on a podcast with Kaylin Jordan a couple years ago after the infamous Meet Magento in Poland, where the fork, which is now MageOS, got not announced, but the possibility of such a drastic measure, and I consider it a drastic measure, was basically outlined. And I had a long conversation because I was relatively new to the whole Magento thing, and then people started to like give me directions, and go like, okay, so this is a troublemaker, that's a problematic person, blah blah blah, blah, all those kind of things. And there's like one quote which stuck with me, and people quoted back to me, which is, I believe you need troublemakers to ask the hard questions. You don't want trolls. Trolls just want to see the world burn. And especially in social media, one of my favorite quotes from Mike Tyson is, social media enables people to disrespect others without the risk of getting punched in the face. So the trolls, I ignore those people, because they don't add anything to the situation, let alone a solution or something. That's irrelevant. The troublemakers, I think troublemaking is sometimes necessary. Of course, I would like it to be that there would be no troublemakers, but in order to not have troublemakers, I need to make sure there's no trouble to make. And sometimes things are like they are. It's like sometimes I get into a fight with my wife. It happens. Like nothing you're gonna do about it. So no hard feelings from my end. And however you start poking into the nest to see if it's still alive, this is also something you got to do. There's nobody complains about the about the person that removes a hornet's nest from your house by poking it to check if there's hornets around. When it sticks in, okay, no, it doesn't make a buzzing sound. Maybe we should like move back a couple yards. Nobody goes like, why did you poke it? But sometimes you need to poke stuff to find out what's going on. So I'm fine with that. But I think where the how would I call it, the anger or the misunderstanding comes from is that in open source people are insanely patriotic towards their single project. That's their like their main thing. It's sometimes I wonder whether people treat it like a girlfriend, and when you use some other piece of technology, it's like cheating on your, and then I have this side girlfriend here, and this is people identify with open source projects. I would assume because they put a certain amount of their life into it, and I don't belittle this or think that's a bad thing. It's just an observation. I always like to keep competition close because I personally think as long as it goes to some other open source project, open source as a whole wins. What's really stupid is open source projects fighting beneath each other while the proprietary guys like dry their tears with dollars. Tears of laughter, that is, right? So I would rather.
And I will say I saw Eric Irway had posted a picture of his Magento mug, and the CEO of Shopify commented on the fact that he had posted this picture of his Magento mug, which I think is particularly rich if you look into what is the Shopify community, right? It's not equal, and maybe there's the same amount of people who use Shopify, but only because they're a merchant. There's not. Like, I just thought it was interesting that the CEO of this big company cares about Magento.
Well,
So it shows, for me, that showed that, hey, Magento is alive and well, and somebody's paying attention.
yeah, and it's also, I think that Magento. I mean, if we fast forward to the year 2080, and somebody does his doctorate, his dissertation on how e-commerce evolved, Magento will be a part of that, and it could be fortunate timing, or it could be the boom in e-commerce itself. But I think that Magento to me was the first, what I would consider like serious e-commerce solution that was out there, that was also affordable for that doesn't need $1 million budget to be run. In order to optimize it, no problem. But I think that Magento, um, over the other stuff, what was it? Was OS Commerce, and then XT Commerce, and then maybe a couple other ones I forgot. And I'm sorry about that, but not my field of expertise back in the early 2000s. So bear with me. But Magento was like this first big thing that hit, and people were like, "Hey, you install it, and it just works." Um, and you can build your e-commerce stuff, and I think this was like liberating to people. And to me, that's what I meant earlier with the power and the great equalizer of open source. Before that, in e-commerce, you had to be like, I don't know, Home Depot or whatever, and be able to buy, what was it? It was like Intershop. Anyone still remember that one? Which
Yeah,
was like, oh, you need e-commerce, like really with payment and stuff. Well, Intershop is the way to go. You know, and I think Magento was at the right place at the right time with a good product fit for a broad group of merchants, and basically spearheaded the e-commerce revolution. And now what's happening is exactly the same that happened to Typo 3. We were like one of the first like serious content management solutions that you could put up next to a proprietary solution. And now what happens is that things like WordPress or other SaaS solutions, I don't know, like Wix and Squarespace and all those kind of things, right? They basically came up and made certain things easier, because you don't always need like this super full-fledged solution to build something. And this is also something coming back to this identifying with an open source project. When you're a Magento agency and somebody asks you what's the right platform to use, your answer will be Magento. And then there's all the blog posts. I wish I had $1 for every blog post. What is the best e-commerce solution? What is the best content management solution? It's a totally wrong question. Question is, what's your demand? What problem are you trying to solve? And then I can answer that. And yeah, long story short.
I think early on, there early on with Magento, there was people that believed in other solutions, and there was people that believed in only selling the one solution you had. And I'm saying at a commercial level with Magento,
Yeah,
and I always embrace the people that were open to other. There's not one solution for everybody, and I think that's
true.
part of the problem that you described earlier. Um, in regards to open source, I was very encouraged in 2019, I think it was, that I joined the Magento conference in Cologne, and the Hamann brothers showed up. Both Sebastian and Stefan showed up to the event, and they put in a talk, and they presented on the talk. And I thought that was incredible that not only do we have theoretic open source competition, but we have them joining us and just describing about an e-commerce solution, not trying to sell shopware. I thought that was a great way of bridging gaps that are there because of a community, right? And it
Yeah,
is really, I think you coined it very well in terms of, this is my group, and I'm not going to talk to another group. it's kind of like in religion, it would be the Catholics and the Lutherans or something like that, right?
Yep. Yeah, we have a
Um,
history of fighting wars over that. So
yeah.
arguably,
So
America, or the US exist because of those wars. So sometimes you can find opportunity in bad stuff.
yeah. And another good example is we did this thing called Mage Titans, and we did it in Austin, and the partner manager who's still there, Dan Furtick, showed up at our event, and he would show up every year, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't try to overly sell BigCommerce, but he was just there to A, view what we're doing, and B, share his experience in his own ecosystem, which I think is the best way to learn what other ecosystems are doing, is by participating in those ecosystems.
Yep. And this is we have something similar in Germany, which is the CMS Garden, which is basically a not-for-profit tiny association with I think like a yearly budget of $3,000. But what we do is what we used to do is show up as one group at big tech conferences or trade fairs for digital marketing, and just show off like, hey, this is the variety and the diversity of open source content management that you can have, and you can talk to each and every one of us. And I found myself I think it was in Boston, selling WordPress to selling the competition to a person at the booth because it solved his problem, while the WordPress guy Gunther wasn't there. And that's also open source to me. It's like a huge bunch of friends in the end.
Yeah. I want to touch a little bit on the idea that we shouldn't be disparaging. You, I want to go back to the hornet's nest,
Yeah.
and I had commented on a comment that I saw about we shouldn't be saying bad things about the community because other people are seeing us and saying our community is disjointed.
Yep.
And my thought to that would be, well, we should be saying things because number one, it's showing our community is active. And if it's relevant and if it's real, it's a conversation that should be had at least. And then I suppose the thing is, where should the conversation be? And I know that you had some conversations in Meet Magento New York behind the scenes. So there's some conversations should happen in behind the scenes, and there's some conversations like the panel discussion you had that should happen in public.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for the most stuff, it's I mean, you mentioned that earlier. I would rather look to the future, and rather than at the past that neither of us can change. There's certain things that I found in this this Magento thing, which are just so Wild West, and I'm having a really hard time looking at these things. And I see a situation, and I can visualize what led to this thing being like that. Going like, oh yeah, we need a Google Workspace. Does anyone have a credit card? And then some guy like, yeah, I got a credit card, and then he pays for that. Now 3 years later, his credit card has changed, and suddenly nothing works. And then the question is, okay, where's the actual admin information? Well, you could try one of these 5 people, which we think were the admin account on this Google Workspace, and and fix those things. But this is stuff that and there's more like that, where it's I hold those people close to my heart because it's very pragmatic and like get stuff done quickly and we'll figure something out later. But that later never comes. It's like documenting source code. Yeah, we do that later. And at a certain point, it's also it's more of a fun story. So I didn't have conversations in a closed circle or behind the curtain, so to speak. But it's more like it's a fun story to share, but it's mostly irrelevant to a lot of people, I would suppose. So I didn't deliberately not do this publicly. I'm a very open and honest person, and if I mess something up, you will know because I will tell you that I messed something up. And this is also what the beauty of open source is to me. You cannot hide stuff in code, so why hide it in PR-related information? I don't believe in it.
Yeah, and I do feel as though there is a number of things that should be discussed that are just items that are out there for interpretation or discussion or debate. Those can happen behind a closed door, and then there'd be some kind of agreement, and we come out and say this is how we're moving forward. I think. Well, first, I'd like to split this podcast into two pieces. So let's change a little bit directions now. Let's
sure.
go into the three. I'd like to talk about the three different entities that are involved in our community, and think about how we can engage people to come up with solutions to help us work together.
Yeah.
I like your idea of not dwelling anything on the past. What the past has done is done, but let's look forward and see about how can we work together with the three entities. And we have Meet Magento Florida coming up, where we have a place to have some dialogue about this even. But let's discuss that. I want to point out too that recently there was a merger announced between Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines, and I think Alaska is buying Hawaiian for $1.9 billion. If we look back on how much Adobe paid for Magento, I think it was $1.8 billion. So the impact on the ecosystem is big, right? Like, it was a big transaction, and there's a lot of things that happen. So we have to recognize that Adobe made a significant investment in Magento, and they have their own ideas of where they'd like it to go.
Well, I also think, but this is just a theory, so welcome to conspiracy land now. I don't believe open source and adopting a community was part of the sales pitch. I genuinely don't believe that. Maybe it was, then everything's cool. But it feels to me like Adobe bought a company plus a product, and suddenly people, and take Adobe's view here for a sec. Suddenly people show up out of nowhere. They're like, hey, by the way, we are the Magento community. Here's a list of demands, and let's talk. And you go like, who are you? Like, didn't we bought like a trademark and a company, and we got all the employees, but who's that? You know, that little bit, that's how it feels. And also, I think the time frames or the time spans that we're talking about here with merging such big deals, that's no discussion you have over a steak and a beer on a weekend. It's like $1.8 billion. There's like, I would assume that at least the legal due diligence was half a year minimum. And then I would take like COVID, even if we take COVID out of this whole equation and cut the Adobe merger to now, and we cut out those 2 years or something, I still think that Adobe is moving way faster than I would have anticipated. So I also had this. That's also what I told Kalen in his podcast. Is like, imagine you're going to a supermarket and you buy an apple, and then you start eating the apple on the way to the parking lot, and somebody keeps running to you and say like, sir, can I get the seeds? And you go like, who are you? What do you want from me? And then you start explaining, well, if we take the seeds, then we can plant a tree, and we can give you like the harvest from the tree later, and it's a super great investment. And you sit there, dude, I just want to eat my apple. I bought it. It's mine. I can do whatever the frick I want with it. You know, like this is and this is like this analogy or this picture in my head that I have of how all this is going. Yeah, this is that's how I see the Adobe side of things. On the other end of the spectrum, I understand the frustration of the people that made MageOS happen, because there was like super passionate people from this end of the spectrum smacking their heads into super tough business people, which maybe or maybe not, but I know I know a couple of people in management positions that are similar to that, and they basically care about the numbers they signed to reach in terms of revenue, in terms of profit, whatever, because they are hired to do that. It's their profession. And I completely understand that if you get hired in this specific area of expertise, that you try to fulfill that goal and the plan that you set out to achieve like 2, 3, maybe 5 years ago. So the overall picture is just a lot bigger, and of course this I can understand that it feels dismissive to people that try to explain using the seeds would be better than you just swallowing the apple and then throwing the trash in the bin. So I can completely relate why such a thing happens. So that's like, I get where they're coming from. I think in the situation we have now, it's not that necessary anymore. Or at least I think it's less necessary than, say, a year or 1.5 years ago. But you can't predict the future. And also we have to see that things like what's happening in MageOS, that stuff has been started like 2-3 years ago ish, something along those lines. It's a long time, and forming an association also takes a long time. So these things were set in motion way before I came in, for example. So
All right, I'm going to ask you a question and see if you can help me here. How do you feel that each of these entities is going to align themselves in a way that's productive for each of the others? So we shouldn't have one thing that competes against each other. Each should be complementary to itself. And I'll point out events. I think that you pointed out Magento Association is going to be in charge of events. MageOS shouldn't be in charge of events, something like that. But at a high level, do you have any of that mapped out in your head, and
well,
can you share any with that?
well, so here's Matthias 100% wishful thinking. It's maybe even better. So Damien Ratzinger in New York asked a really interesting question. He said, if you, as the executive director of Magento Association, had $50 million today, what would you do? And I gave it some thought, and it's like, and he asked me on the spot. He was like, you have 30 seconds to think about it. That's how Damien is. Love it, to be honest. So I would hire quite a lot of people, 50% being software engineers, so that we can get the open source code stuff going, because there's basically two types of work to open source. There's the, here I contribute code back, and then there's the, I have the architectural overview and I will write the tests for you, and if the tests fail because they're like unstable, which most front-end integration tests are, that's just how it is, I will make sure to run them a couple times to see if it's a real problem or if the test suite hung up, those kind of things. Then I would like to have people who take a look at publicly reported bugs, because reporting a bug is also contribution in my eyes. Because you're a merchant, you're using the software, you're clicking a button, something doesn't work. Now you can stick your hand in the sand and go like, okay, I don't care. But somebody took the effort to make a GitHub account, to open an issue, to contribute back and say, hey, I found something that doesn't work and I'm not able to fix it. That's contribution. And I would like to have people in charge who help answering those requests and being a good sport towards the merchants. I would like to have people who are running around all kinds of events, not just Meet Magentos or 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 Adobe Summit or whatever events there, but also at all the other e-commerce conferences to basically say, hey, yes, there's Adobe Commerce, we all know that, but Magento is still here, so we need people out there talking about these things. I would like to have people who create a certification program not only for developers but also for the merchants, because a person working at a merchant maintaining the Magento store right now, it's good for their CV if they have a certificate to show as well. And I think that Magento as a whole has some sort of responsibility towards those people. And say that we get into a dire situation with economy, having such a certificate can be the difference between letting go and not being let go, or having sort of a career opportunity at some point. So this is where I think that would be really, really good. And of course, I would like to have people create proper documentation. I would like to have people create YouTube videos, as for developers, but also for merchants, how to do certain things, and basically market the product proper. So that would be my ideal scenario. I don't think we need $50 million for that, but I think we can get started with maybe 3 to 5 annually to get something like that going. And as you said, $1.8 billion shows there's how we in Germany would say there's music in the project. There's something you can dance to. So there's a lot of momentum and people. Yeah. So that would be ideal.
Okay, so the reality right now is that MageOS is there and it's here to stay. And how do you feel their role will be going forward, and how can Magento Association and MageOS work together more?
So we are actively collaborating on merchant documentation, for example. So there's an amazing guy, David Lambauer, who started using AI to write merchant-focused documentation. How do I create a tax group? How many attributes can I put onto a product? Those kind of things. And this documentation is primarily geared towards MageOS because that's where David found his home for his heart, so to speak, or for his passion. But we figured that this applies to Magento as well, and MageOS at least at this point in time is almost identical. There's a different logo on the top, and a couple colors might be off, but the general inner workings are the same, and are also supposed to remain the same. So instead of having the merchant documentation on MageOS and the same documentation somewhere in the Magento field, which would result in duplicate content, and then we would downrank each other, we decided, hey, let's just use one domain for this, which we could maybe even use to SEO rank and lift Magento and MageOS at the same time in terms of online search engine discoverability. I think that's the word. This is what we can actively do together. There's also one thing to keep in mind is that MageOS is mostly developers, people who are coming from a development background, who don't or didn't, depends on who you ask, feel heard enough by Adobe. It's like, hey, I have a great idea. I want to build this. Who do I talk to? Who can I brainstorm this back and forth with? And there's no process for such a thing at Adobe yet. And we're working on creating such a process. But such a process needs to be signed off by some manager, which needs to get that signed off by his manager, and then the next manager and the next manager to get it's a huge company, and they have to abide to certain rules, and some of those rules are given by the feds. This is not some arbitrary decision somebody at Adobe takes or something. So biggest and best example to me is the roadmap. So why is there no public roadmap how the product will change in the future over the course of the next 5 years, let's say? Well, you can't put this out because that's insider information and it might alter with your stock market prices. It's not so easy. And this is not some person at Adobe deciding, oh, we don't give them a roadmap because we don't wanna. So, no, they're not allowed to. And that's, to me, that's totally different. So dealing with a publicly traded company is not as easy or simple as it might feel. So the most of the manpower behind MageOS is developer driven. Absolutely. So a lot of people who are not happy with how Adobe did things in the past, or still not happy how it works now. And like I said, I can get all that. And they are basically looking to get Magento to a spot where they think it should be. Modern technology, rewriting stuff. There's a lot of refactorings that could or could not be necessary. Those kind of things. So that's a real strong point of MageOS. I didn't see too much of the business side yet. Disclaimer: I'm not super deep into MageOS, because that's what the MageOS Association needs to do. And I, at this point in time, didn't see any need to dig into that because to me it's friends doing their thing, etc. So the business side of things I didn't see a lot yet, which doesn't mean they don't have it up their sleeves and maybe are preparing all this kind of thing. Could all be possible. I don't know. In terms of events, I still think that Magento as a trademark is strong globally. And I think one of the biggest concerns, or not concerns, but complaints that a lot of people have is this ad campaign that used to run Magento is now Adobe Commerce. That didn't kill Magento, did it? So this is something. The brand Magento in itself is strong. The Meet Magento events are strong. I think we had a great year so far with all the events that I was able to attend. I think I missed 2. Yeah, no, 3. India, UK, and Indonesia. Those were the ones I didn't manage to come. And Florida, the first Florida one must have been amazing. But I'm definitely going to the next one. So this is just stuff that it's not an opinion whether you can run a Meet Magento event. It's illegal to use the name, period. And that's not because Adobe makes it illegal. That's because international trademark laws make it illegal. So here's the thing about trademark laws. If you own the trademark to Brent's podcast and you register it, and I start using Brent's podcast as a trademark for something completely different, you have to take that from me. Because if you don't, you lose your trademark. Because trademarks have to be enforced. That's just international law. That's how it works. So what Magento or what Meet Magento, the trademark is that we are a sub-licensee. Adobe asks us, hey, we would rather have Magento Association talk to the people that are currently without written license agreement use that trademark, then have our copyright and trademark team do it, because those are, without talking shit about lawyers, but that are just lawyers. They don't care how much you did for the community. They don't care how long you've worked for Magento or Adobe. It doesn't matter to them. Like, trademark usage, illegal, lawsuit. That's their way of thinking. They're hired to do that. And so these are things that we are currently doing. because Adobe just said, "Hey, your turn."
All right, so we have a few minutes left here. You're in a unique position where you're connecting to Adobe, but you're also connecting to MageOS. Do you think there has to be a roundabout group where the MageOS connects directly with Adobe now to kind of make this trifecta into something that
I
seems cohesive?
Ideally, I'd like to have the MageOS be something like an incubator. Test out stuff, see if it works, and Adobe because Adobe is still the final gatekeeper over the source code. And if you want to just get stuff merged and get it out there, MageOS seems like a really, really viable solution to me. However, I don't know if big companies will jump on that train. I just don't know. From some talks I had, there's a trust issue, which has nothing to do with people. This just has to do with size. And people go like, well, they say it's the same, but I don't have the time to check the source code whether it is the same. I don't know. And somebody in New York said something like, if they have 2,000 merchants on it, then that's enough trust for me. Right? And I don't oh no, the other way around. I do trust Vinay. I do trust Simon and Ivan and all the people that are writing code for it. But that's just it. It's I cannot personally vouch for it. And if somebody decides that they wait until there's 2,000 merchants on it, proven 2,000 merchants, that's a trust thing that they just need to overcome. But that comes with time. Rome wasn't built in a day either. I still think it would be better to have all of the MageOS people go nuts in the MageOS code base, but at the same time help out with the Magento code base, which by design runs a slower approach to merging stuff. And I can relate. In Adobe's position, I don't want to get sued over some bug that somebody introduced, because in the end they are liable for everything that goes in. So I understand why they are moving comparatively slow in terms of merging stuff, and they take like extra care with merges. I get it. Makes sense to me. Did this answer the question? I don't know.
No, that's good. Yeah, we're gonna have to pick this up again. I think there's a lot of topics to discuss here. I will be at Meet Magento Florida, so I'm going to suggest that maybe we have a little podcasting booth there that we can record some conversations, and it would be interesting to get some pre-done questions where we get people to contribute in terms of, here's my questions about the community.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Here's my thoughts and ideas about the community. Here's my concerns about the community, and really have a place where we can air that. And but I do feel as though the biggest thing I've learned out of my, let's call it A/B testing, was let's be positive, right? Let's think of solutions to move forward. And if you are the person poking the hornet's nest, let's not just poke, but let's come up with a solution along with the poking, right? Yep. I think that one of the things that bugs me in community is when people point out something that's wrong or bad, but they don't point out what is the solution around that, or here's my ideas to help solve this problem. I think and I know there's always going to be people that are just going to raise their hand and say, this is a problem. I don't know how to solve it, but I want to tell you it's a problem, right?
I dislike those people. What I value though is people that come up to me and say, this is messed up. I don't know how. This is why it's messed up. I don't know how to solve it, but I'm willing to provide my brain capacity with people who are just thinking about it. I'm willing to participate in a brainstorming about that, because so Those people did their research because they know what sucks and why it sucks. And now other people can chime into the whole discussion and come like, hey, okay, so how about if we do that? Throw an idea out and ask the people that complained earlier to try and shut this idea down. Just to figure out, does it work, does it not work? And if they're
Yeah.
not able to shut it down within a couple minutes, that's a possible solution to move forward really, really quickly.
Yeah, that's great. Matthias, it's been a great conversation today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and
You're welcome.
we'll come up with some more topics to speak about in the future. And I do feel
Yay.
as though this idea of a panel was informative and important that we had in New York. That whole idea should be brought forward continuously to have the community talk
A
in
regular,
public.
yeah.
Yeah, if
I will
it's in
talk to
person,
Ravi and
better.
Nicole about that.
Yeah, excellent.
That might be good.
Good. I will put all this in the show notes. This is the second part of the episode as we close
True.
out this part of it. But thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Talk Commerce is a production of Content Basis LLC. For more creative content, go to contentbasis.io.